So, I just go through what I think of the movie, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. I've written a few notes for you if that makes it easier.
Still don't know why you couldn't do this yourself.
Come on, it'll be fun. You get to host a video. Trust me, the fans will love it.
Right, well, what'll you be doing?
I'll cover the notes on the book, and an NPC can jump in with details from the game when he has to.
This seems overly complicated.
Yeah, probably, but I like trying new things. Ready, NPC? Ready.
Oh, God almighty, this is gonna be an afternoon.
You're gonna want to hold off on those.
I'm working with you two again. I'll need it. Okay, what is this? Dante's Inferno was a movie based on some game and it came out in 2010. It starred Vanessa Branch, Steve Bloom, Peter Jessup, Mark Hamill, and Dante was played by Graham McTavish.
Shit, filthy Scot.
It was made by Visceral Games, Star Media, and EA. I guess they're a studio too.
No, it's EA.
What, were they trying to buy a vowel?
It stands for Electronic Arts.
Well, they left out the other vowels. What about IOU?
After what they did with Battlefront 2, they certainly do.
Right, so the movie was made using several different animation teams who split the movie into different parts. That sounds like it would make the movie look clunky and disconnected. Why would they think that was a good idea?
Actually, the Animatrix had some success with that a few years back.
The what? That sounds like a computer chip a child would come up with.
Would you just stick to your notes, please? Okay, my turn. The game came out in 2010 for PS3, PSP, and the Xbox 360, around the same time as the movie. And it was an incredible game. You play as Dante, a crusader returning from the Third Crusade, only to discover that his fiancée has been murdered and her soul has been taken to hell by Lucifer himself. Dante's Inferno is a third-person hack-and-slash platformer, much like God of War. It featured great level designs, awesome boss fights, apocalyptic music, incredible graphics, and some of the most satisfying combat. If you didn't think that was awesome, you are legally blind. The game was designed by Visceral Games, who also made one of my favorite horror games of all time, Dead Space. And while there was room for a sequel, Visceral Games closed in 2017 after Dead Space 3, so we're not likely ever going to see a continuation to the story. But you know what we do have? The source material! Behold, the Divine Comedy written by Dante Alighieri between 1308 and 1320. It was originally just called Commedia, but was given the divine title more than 200 years after its completion. The story is a self-insert of sorts, following the poet Dante as he takes on a divine exploration of hell, purgatory, and heaven, broken into three sections: the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. The Inferno is the most famous of the three and is what we'll be focusing on today. The Divine Comedy is an epic poem called a cantica. It was actually written as an exploratory piece, as well as a massive screw you to Dante's real-life nemesis and detractors. This was shown by Dante meeting several of them in various circles of hell during his trek. The poem discusses theology, virtue, sin, and in many ways has become the bedrock for our understanding of hell itself. It's since become one of the most influential pieces of literature of all time. And the game was a roller coaster of satisfying combos and heroic romance.
And I guess the movie... it was a ting.
And you'll learn all about it as we descend into Dante's Inferno.
You two are paying me for this, right? So the movie opens, I guess that's Dante on the horse there, getting lost in the woods. And he gets jumped by a lion, a leopard, and a wolf. Is a circus in town or something?
I'll take this one, Finn. These three beasts appear early in the book and each represent a sin. The leopard was malice and fraud, the lion was violence, and the she-wolf was incontinence.
So the wolf has trouble peeing all over herself?
No! The poem is loaded with symbolism and deeper meanings. The wolf, in more modern terms, represented greed. All three of these sins chased Dante through the woods of error until the ancient poet Virgil saved him and offered to guide him on a divine journey through the three worlds of the afterlife. They weren't in the game, though. Dante just headed home and saw his dad and fiancée slaughtered.
Right, well here, Dante fights off the animals.
Did that horse just do a feckin' backflip?
Crimson, you okay?
I'm gonna need some of that beer.
Dante keeps going until he reaches home, where everyone has been slaughtered like a bunch of sickly sheep. And that includes his family.
Father, Oh, Father. Beatrice. Lord, let her be alive.
So, Beatrice is a significant character in this movie, but she didn't appear until the Purgatorio, the cantica set after the Inferno. Beatrice was something of a Christ figure, and she was a guide to Dante in Paradiso. She represents divine love, taking over for Virgil since he represents human reason, and human reason is limited. But in the movie and game, Beatrice is just Dante's girlfriend. You know, because intricate symbolism and a narrative on deep religious subtext can just be replaced by saving the princess from the castle.
Actually, she's dead, and topless, very nice, until a bunch of smoke whips up and drags her to hell.
God in heaven.
What? Dante?
She is mine. No!
From here, Dante hacks his way through a zombie horde until he reaches the gates of hell. Nope, that's it, I'm out. You can watch your weird kinky garbage by yourself, Crimson.
No, wait, Finn, no, get back here. It's not actually tentacle porn.
Don't worry, Crim, I got this.
The arm things are actually stitching Dante's sins to his chest in the shape of a cross, resembling the cross from his Templar armor. But he actually started the game doing this to himself. And this cross is significant because it depicted all of the sins he committed in his life, notably the ones he committed during the Crusades. And I'm of two minds of this because at once they both work, but they also don't work. As he pressed through the Inferno, Dante denies that he did anything wrong, because he was promised by a bishop that all of his sins would be absolved, no matter what he did.
Mercenaries of Florentina, in payment for taking the cross to reclaim the Holy Land, your Immaculate Father hereby absolves you of all your sins.
So Dante didn't think the crimes he committed in the Crusades were valid. For the movie, these demon hands impose themselves on Dante, as if forcing him to confront what he did. But Dante still denies his sins in the game, even though he's wearing them in the open for all to see. If he wanted to redeem himself, then this could work, but he doesn't focus on redemption. He focuses on saving Beatrice. So instead, the cross is like Dante saying, "Look what I got away with." Although the game does more with Dante's sins, the movie has a better reason for the cross to be here. Although if Dante didn't want the cross on his chest, I'm not sure why he doesn't just tear it off immediately. He's stubborn enough to do it, and it holds no meaning to him. He just doesn't have a stable reason for him to keep it on.
Welcome back. I found more Guinness. I'll stay, but no more weird kinky shit, aye? Got it.
Should I tell him about the succubi that sprout penis claws out of their vaginas?
What was that?
Nothing.
Right, so Beatrice is taken to hell and Dante can't get through the gates.
Why, God? Why are you doing this?
It is not the Lord that brought you to this fate, Dante.
And this must be Virgil.
Crimson, why is a ghost escorting him through hell? Well, see, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke. Dante held Virgil in extremely...
Hold it! I can already tell this is going to get confusing. When you say Dante, do you mean the man in the book or the man who wrote the book?
Okay. How about I just use Alighieri when I'm talking about the author?
Aye, that'll be easier.
Right. Anyway, Alighieri held Virgil in very high regards, since Virgil was considered among the greatest of all the Roman poets. Apparently that's one thing the movie got right.
I lived under Augustus in the time of the false and lying gods.
Are you not Virgil, glory of the poets? He who wrote the Aeneid?
Since Virgil died before Christianity was a thing and didn't have any faith in their god, he couldn't technically get into heaven, so Dante built a place in hell for him and other ancient poets like Ovid and Homer. Apparently Dante was also promised a spot next to them in hell one day. Dante often called Virgil his master in the poem and hung on his every word for advice. Virgil was sent by Beatrice to guide Dante through hell and purgatory. I'm not sure why he's here in the movie though. Maybe he just feels bad for Dante. He was much more of a tour guide in the game. Virgil just hung out and gave a few helpful hints or lore on wherever they were in the Inferno.
When the soul quits a body from which it has uprooted itself, Minos judges it to the seventh circle. There, it sprouts, shoots up like a sapling. No body, only the pain.
He did have the same reason for helping Dante in the game as he did in the book.
Have pity on me, whatever you are.
A lady called I prayed for her to command me.
Beatrice.
Although because Beatrice died only a few minutes before this moment in the game, I'm not sure how this could work in the timeline. Real quick though, I wasn't paying attention. Why is Beatrice being dragged to hell? Well, actually, the movie has that covered.
She made a wager with Lucifer to see your safe return. She lost.
Wager? What wager?
Lucifer bet that you would betray her love.
Kind of a stupid risk to take when Beatrice is supposed to be this pure, innocent soul. So Dante's saving a daft princess. Got it. Dante jumps into the fire, and he meets Charon, this weird boat monster. He's the ferryman. He's hideous! I hope termites don't have souls or he'll lose that hood ornament he calls a head. That's actually what Dante does in the game. Focus, people! So Dante and Virgil ride the boat monster until Dante pisses it off and a bunch of flying demons swarm in. Dante fights them, but gets his sword stuck on a demon's face, so he takes this weird magic scythe. Well, that's not how the game handled it. This wasn't some random weapon from some random demonic foot soldier. It belonged to the Angel of Death. Impossible! It really does make the scythe look less significant when Dante doesn't have to wrestle it from death itself. And it goes without saying that none of this happened in the book. Dante was an unarmed poet who faced little opposition, and the few times he did, it was usually dealt with by Virgil, except for one time in the city of Dis when angels had to sweep in to help. And we have a torture scene with Beatrice, skipping that. No, you should cover it. Who's recapping the movie for you? You are. Right. So shut it. So Dante and Virgil set up for... Wait a minute now. Is it just me or do these two look more detailed? Yeah. This must be where a new animation team took over. I mean, it looks fine, but why? I don't know. Probably a time-saving thing so they could get the movie out sooner. Get 6 different studios to work on 15 minutes of footage each and you can get a finished product out 6 times faster. Well, so long as no one slacked on their job, I suppose it's alright. So Dante and Virgil get to the first circle of hell, reserved for virtuous pagans, unbaptized babies, and people who cut in line.
Here suffer those that did not sin, yet did not have the required faith.
And the best way to demonstrate the circle is babies with razor blades for arms. Hey, that makes perfect fucking sense! Dante outruns them by jumping a gap and slamming a door in the pursuing babies' faces. One thing the movie does right is it takes a moment to point out several historical figures who exist in this particular circle.
They are familiar to me.
The great rulers and philosophers of the Golden Age.
Is that not Hector and Electra? Caesar and King Latinus?
The poem paused to list members of each circle like this to give an example of what kind of person highlighted each type of sin, or to throw shade at specific people that Alighieri didn't like. Especially in the 5th circle, but we'll get to that. Further into the circle, Dante meets some snake monster wearing a chef's hat. It's Minos, judge of the damned. Well, I guess justice is blind in hell too, since his hat's too big for him. Dante sliced him up in a quick scene, finishing him off with a poorly placed buzzsaw blade on the floor. I guess someone better call the janitor of the damned now. Next is the Circle of Lust, home of the eternally kink-shamed. And I see the animation has changed again. Dante now looks like a rebellious teenager who refuses to cut his hair. You think that's weird? Virgil looks like the mind control guy from My Hero Academia. So Dante approaches the phallic-shaped Tower of Lust, where he meets a group of succubi inside and— Hold it, we're skipping through this part. What? Why? Because there's no way we can show any of this fight without— Trust me, it's not worth the headache. In the book, the Tower of Lust wasn't really a thing, but the Great Storm was. Lovers were tossed and thrown about by the winds of passion, symbolically displaying their nature as it was during their lives. The punishments in the Inferno were often very ironic or symbolic, and a lot of the fun was discussing how the punishment fit the crime. One easy example of this was from the Circle of Fraud, where people who claimed to be prophetic had their heads attached backwards. They tried to look through the veil of time and life, and in death they couldn't even look forward. It was very clever imagery, which was what made the Divine Comedy such a brilliant work of art. I'll just add that they also cut out the boss fight with Cleopatra. The movie instead replaced it with Lucifer taunting Dante again.
What do you swear, Dante? Do you want me to show her the truth?
Serpent! It's all lies! I never betrayed her! I'll kill you! No!
We also get another scene of Dante's time in the Crusades. He's angered because he doesn't like the orders he's been given.
What? King Richard wants us to stand guard over 3,000 prisoners? That is his command?
3,000 prisoners would have a lot of potential as test subjects.
Are you sure you're not a mad scientist?
Will you shut your gob? I told you, I'm not a scientist. I'm
Fine, whatever, but the movie's still playing.
Dante and his brother-in-law-to-be, Francesco, patrol the jail when one prisoner gets his ass handed to him by a guard. A woman that the prisoner was defending makes a deal with Dante to stop the beating.
The nights here are lonely and cold, my lord, even for a soldier of God. Perhaps I could warn thee.
Dante, do not commit this wicked sin.
How is it a sin if I am already absolved? Guards, hold!
The boy's got a get-out-of-jail card for every sin he commits. I really could have used something like that in my youth.
Please tell me your idol isn't a guy named Krieger.
So Dante goes off for a rattle, and the flashback ends with Beatrice having seen it all.
How could you do that? To me? To us?
I was weak. The war changed me. You know who I am inside. We've known each other since childhood.
This is actually a good change from the game. See, we caught glimpses of Beatrice slowly changing through the game, but we didn't really see how. The movie actually fills some of that in with some early torture scenes, and now this big revelation of Dante's betrayal. It made her feel like a more realistic character instead of Beatrice just giving up and freely going along with whatever Lucifer wanted. Oh, I lost a bet. I guess I'm gonna go along with whatever Satan wants to do today. Plus, it made her look like she was actually being corrupted instead of putting up with a bet that she lost.
No, it's not true. He wouldn't do this to me. Dante!
What did I say? Even the purest of souls can be corrupted.
I like what Del Boy here says about how corrupt people are.
It is not our fault. None of it. Man is good.
No, you don't understand. The earth is another form of hell, and men are its demons.
Oi, people suck. Truer words were never said.
I think you should slow down on those.
And I think you should shut your gob. Dante keeps walking until he gets to the Gluttony circle.
It is Cerberus, guardian of the third circle, Gluttony.
Hang on. I thought Cerberus was a three-headed dog from Greek myth. Why is it this worm monster? And in the story, that's not very Christian.
Ah, well, there is a very good historical reason for that.
Oh God, you got him started.
There are two main reasons why the Inferno was written like this: oral tradition and Alighieri's admiration for Virgil. Because of when the story was originally written, oral tradition was the norm for passing stories along. And considering the cultural blender that was early Europe, lots of stories and lots of cultures were often mixed. Of course, one of these cultures was the ancient Greek mythology, which had one of the more detailed depictions of the underworld, with stories that are still popular today. Alighieri may have brought in some of the monsters from Greek myth in order to give the Inferno greater depth and cultural relevance. That's why Cerberus, Charon, Minos, Nessus, Geryon, and others make appearances through the text. The other reason is because Alighieri really admired Virgil and his works. Since Virgil was Roman, he and Alighieri both shared a country, which made him both a national and personal hero to Alighieri. Though it wasn't the main reason, Alighieri was just fanboying for Senpai.
Notice me, Senpai!
And so, Alighieri was able to seamlessly implement many classical elements into his tour of hell.
Okay, but why is Cerberus a giant worm monster? Isn't he supposed to be a dog?
I don't know. Creative interpretation? Some analysts think that Cerberus had the heads of 3 men instead of 3 dogs because he's described as having frothy beards.
Has anyone ever told you you're a complete nerd?
Quite frequently. I buy a new book every time it happens.
Huh. Right, back to Cerberus. So he punishes fat people by eating them or grabbing them with his tentacles and shoving them in his... Crimson, what did I tell you about weird kinky shit?
That is not what's going on.
That is the foulest fate one could ever imagine. Isn't there perhaps a way around it?
No, not if you wish to reach fair Beatrice.
So be it! Release me, demon!
It's not a fetish! Well, I mean, I really hope it's not. I'm just not sure why he had to go through that route in the first place. In the game, Dante just tore off Cerberus's heads one at a time, then passed through them. Well, he needs to pass through Cerberus one way or another. Inside, he meets a withered soul that claims he knows Dante. The soul begs for forgiveness, and Dante just hands it out.
Please, please.
Your suffering weighs heavy on my heart, spirit. Be free.
Is this just something he can do now? Just warp dead people out of hell? Well, absolving people was a mini-game you could play in the game. Plus, Dante did have access to magic, which the movie completely cut out. This is the dumbest project I've ever been a part of, and I am not getting paid enough for it. We were paying him? What was that? Nothing. Dante gets sick of being eaten, so he cuts his way out and falls to the fourth circle. It's home to the greedy, the miserly, and for assholes to take credit for someone else's work.
What a mockery is made of the brief battle for possessions that make so short a life.
These damned remind me of my father.
Was his father also squished through a roller press?
48, 49, 50, 51. What? Where are my last 3 coins? Dante?
Oh my god, and Dante's father is played by Mark Hamill. This is perfect! Why? Because now it sounds like Dante was raised by the Joker, and it makes way too much sense.
I'm short 3 crowns. Are you stealing from me, woman?
And speaking of Dante's father, the disgusting tub of lard has become an even more disgusting tub of lard in hell.
No man can absolve you of your sins, but some men can be rewarded in hell.
Oh, God, I'm gonna be sick watching that flabby monster. So Dante works out his daddy issues, but the Golden Patriarch moves surprisingly quickly. He's like Dr. Robotnik that way. But the fight ends when Dante kicks the gross geriatric into a pit of molten gold. He's dead, moving on. Next circle! This one's anger. Humped all the idiots who tailgate in traffic. Our married couple go along, crossing some big river on some big giant. It's the river Styx, and the giant is Phlegius. And he wasn't a giant in the book, he was another ferryman like Charon. Although I am amused that the movie kept in this little screw you moment from the book.
Who are you that comes here before your time?
If I come, I do not remain. But I know you, hell dog, filthy as you are. You were Filippo Argente in life.
Come down, Dante, and face your own enemy!
Let the damned rip you to shreds, wretch!
As I said before, the poem was written as a direct slight to a few choice individuals, and this guy was one of the more prominent of Alighieri's enemies. In the book, Dante actually said that he would enjoy knowing that Argente was ripped apart by the other wrathful spirits, and Virgil agreed with him, saying that it was a just punishment for the man. In real life, Filippo Argente was a political enemy of Dante, and his inclusion here is clearly meant as an insult. The lesson is, don't piss off the writer or else he'll put you in a book and kill you. Next circle, and oh look, the animation's changed again. Blessed be, I am getting tired of all the changes in this movie. I have nothing wrong with these sections individually. I mean, the character designs look fine and everything is animated smoothly. But what is that thing sticking out the back of Dante's head? Is that an umbilical cord? It's really jarring to see new characters every couple of minutes. Just tell me it doesn't get any worse than this. Crimson? Hey, I'm just reading my book here. So the next circle is a city. Crimson, why is there a city in hell? Is this where the demons rent their apartments? Actually, this is the circular city of Dis. It's inside the 6th circle, that of Heresy, and contains multiple red mosques. Since Dante was a Christian, he may have seen other religions as heretical, a quality which is reflected in both the game and movie counterparts, though perhaps more harshly.
Since when are heretics worth a Christian life?
The city actually rings the remaining circles, so technically everything from here on out is actually inside the city. So Dante rushes the city. Actually, one more thing while I'm thinking about it. This section of the book contained an important symbolic moment. This was where Dante and Virgil ran into the rebellious ones, who were the angels who defied God during Lucifer's rebellion. Virgil tried to reason with them, but they brushed him off and threatened the journey through hell. To pass through them, Virgil had to request divine intervention, and an angel descended to rout the rebellious ones. This showed how human reason, which again Virgil represented, could not solve all of man's problems. Sometimes they had to rely upon God for assistance.
Gods, are you done being a complete nerd?
Actually, if you really want me to nerd out, I could talk about how Pelagius is actually the perfect ferryman to act as a bridge between the Circle of Wrath and the city of Dis. See, it all goes back to Greek myth when Pelagius torched the Temple of Delphi in defiance to Apollo. Hey you! Are you a fanatic? And do you like card games? And do you enjoy having fun at your friend's expense but are still suffering from the trauma of your last Settlers of Catan match? Then do I have a game for you! Based on the webcomic of the same name, The Coins of MacGuffin is a game of strategy, a touch of luck, and it oozes with nerdy fan power. Each card is based on a certain fandom, like the Whovians, the Browncoats, Bronies, Scoobies, Pokemaniacs, Mouseketeers, Trekkies, Gleeks, and even the Twihards get some love. Oh, that's a lot of cards. How many fandoms are represented? So many that Linkara and yours truly have official cards. Playing is simple. You get 10 cards and 5 coins. Each coin represents a type of fan category. Each card belongs to 2 of those categories. You set a card down to attack, add a coin to bolster your offense, and roll the dice to calculate your attack score. You can switch coins between turns to alter your strategy, but if your card runs out of hit points, it's out. The objective is to get all the coins of MacGuffin, or annihilate your opponent so they have no cards left in their hand. How well can you do? So head on over to coinsofmacguffin.com to buy a starter pack for yourself and to check out their webcomic. Make sure to snag a Rogues Gallery card too. It's the best one.
You know, Crimson, you're a lot more pleasant to be around when you're quiet.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And you ruined it. Alright, the animation is starting to bother me. Everything is either oddly still or really grandiose. There is no in between. And don't get me started on the lip syncing.
Who is this new monster? What does he want?
It was actually pretty good in other sections, but even when it wasn't, it was easier to ignore because the characters moved more.
Either way, we're getting into the more detailed circles now. From the 7th circle on, everything is broken down into more specific categories. Take violence, for example. It's not just that one is violent, but people could be violent against their fellow man, or themselves, or art, or they could be violent against God. Many historians think that Alighieri wanted to go into more detail with these circles since he had been kind of broad thus far and could really flesh out different tortures for different sins. Especially fraud, since that was broken into 10 different torture pits.
So this is the 7th circle. Thank God we're almost done with this. This place is home to the violent, the destructive, the suicidal, and the arsewipes that stick their gum under tables. So the duo reaches another river.
How shall we cross? It's impossible.
But it's fine, because Virgil can summon magic horse people.
That's Nessus the Centaur. His blood is what killed Heracles. In the poem, Dante and Virgil encountered a group of centaurs headed by Chiron, the same centaur tasked with running Camp Half-Blood. Chiron ordered Nessus to deliver Dante across the river, the Phlegathon, and Nessus acted as a tour guide by pointing out various sinners suffering in the waters below.
Here is Alexander, Dionysius, Attila, and countless others.
The damned here are worse off than the Styx.
These were the kings of bloodshed and despoilment.
So, if the last one was the Styx, then I guess AC/DC's Highway to Hell leads here. What does that mean?
I don't know, I hadn't said anything in a while. I was bored. But it's okay, because the horse lady can fly, judging by how she's moving. But the fun doesn't stop as Dante enters the suicide forest.
But instead of a Logan Paul reference, we see Dante's mother.
Why do you break me? Have you no pity?
Mother?
Yes, son. I too am among the damned.
So Dante's mother is now a tree. Do you think she needs someone to water her? Dude! What about pruning? Does someone come by with little scissors? Dude! Well, at least she isn't a statue. Then she'd be frozen and covered in bird shit. Dante gets around to absolving his mother, and she moves on to heaven. Probably for the best, because they have better groundskeepers. Will you stop that?
We are still in the 7th circle?
Yes, the abominable sands. It is here the damned did violence against God.
And what do you know, but we get another flashback. And it seems that our little Dante committed a war crime by slaughtering a large group of prisoners.
Fight with me, Crusaders! Spill the blood of these heathens! Their souls are already lost!
Why isn't Dante wearing a cuirass in this scene when he had one in each other flashback? And what's going on with his neck here? It's like none of the other animation teams talk with each other. What kind of shoddy craftsmanship is this? Oh, and I guess Dante gets to meet his friends again.
Crusaders? Here? Why are you being punished? Our cause was holy. We are absolved of sin.
Why does Dante keep using that line? Why hasn't he figured it out yet that the bishop lied?
I took up the crusade. The bishop assured us that our sins would be absolved.
And you believed him. You actually believed these salesmen of salvation.
You'd think he'd figure it out, but maybe those barbs on his tiara have been piercing into his brain. And some other guy shows up.
Francesco, not you too.
God never condones violence of any kind. There was no holy war, don't you understand? The priests lied!
So Dante fights his cousin or whatever, then kills him by cutting his head in half. They also changed Francisco's design from the game, and I'm not crazy about it. In the movie, he's a scarred soldier, but in the game, he's this monstrosity of meat and bones with swords jammed into his back. He looks way more like an embodiment of violence in the game. Plus, he didn't turn into dust. Dante absolved him and saved his soul. In fact, Francisco gave it willingly.
Redeem yourself, brother. Use my soul wisely.
I don't think the movie scene is that bad, but it doesn't have the same detail that the game does. Or, for lack of a better word, it has no soul. Hey, how come whenever I make a pun, I don't get a booing crowd? Because you're not the main character. You have a button you press, don't you? There's an app for everything. Circulate. Sweet merciful Christ in heaven, I'm bored. This one holds a whole host of fraudsters. Crimson says that it has seducers, false prophets, flatterers, idiots who don't know how to use their turn signals, and the hypocrites. And the animation's changed again. And this is the worst of the lot yet. Dante's design has gone from decent, to okay, to just ugly. He started as a noble knight, then to a stoic badass, then skinny mid-90s rock star, a muscle-bound dynamo, and now he's this limp weakling. I feel if they stuck to a single design, I'd be far less annoyed. So the circle of fraud is just a long set of bridges over a bunch of pits. And Virgil says that Dante has to cross them alone.
Alone? What of you, great poet?
I will not be far, believe me.
Why? Does Virgil have a barbecue to go to? Why does Dante have to go solo here?
Because that's the way it's done.
Dante continues on his journey across the Bridge of Doom. He finally learns the woman he boinked in the Crusades was married, and her husband was the scumbag that murdered Beatrice. And oh boy, if he thought the lip-syncing was bad before, you've seen nothing.
These sins are my own! You have no right to Beatrice! Relinquish her!
Dante looks like he's giving a hearty Tarzan shout. But let's not forget the wedding scene. Dante goes tearing through hordes of demons, making blood geysers out of every one of them. And yet this is still less bloody than the Red Wedding. Dante's too late to stop the wedding, because of course he is. We've got to have that added drama. And Beatrice seals the deal by eating some nugget of corrupted souls. I don't know, it looks like the kind of fruit they'd serve at Liongate's copyright department. I think it's an eggplant. An eggplant? What? Eggplants are gross.
Now, let my power flow through your soul. Give in to our union. And together, we will regain paradise!
Oh, I want to jump in with a really quick tangent here. There were no pomegranates in the book, but the game's inclusion here is a very good nod to Greek myth. In the story of Hades and Persephone, the rule was that anyone who consumed food or drink in the underworld was forced to remain there. Hades tricked Persephone into eating 6 pomegranate seeds, so she was forced to stay in the underworld for 6 months out of the year. While the game uses a pomegranate as more of a source of corruption, this is still a very subtle nod to Alighieri's use of Greek myth. These guys did their research, and it shows. But as cool as that fun fact is, the movie does outshine the game here. While we're still on the subject of corruption, I can believe Beatrice being pushed to this point in the movie because we saw her being tortured both physically and emotionally. It really feels like she's been brainwashed into agreeing to this marriage. The game just made her look resigned to her fate. She lost a bet, so she never tried to resist Lucifer and just ate the pomegranate seeds without complaint. So, point to the movie for making her put some effort in. Well, the game might have had Beatrice wander off, but immediately after their marriage, Satan sends his new bride into a fight. So now I guess it's a redneck wedding. But Dante doesn't want to fight his ex-fiancée, so she just beats on him and sets him on fire.
So now I guess it's a Scottish wedding. I don't think that's right.
You've never been to Scotland! You don't know!
The real shame of this scene is how much they cut from the game. In the 8th circle, Dante had to fight through 10 different rooms, each one based on a different group of frauds. Now that fit nicely within the 10 Malabulgs, especially since the game included statues of the various tortures that the sinners had to undergo.
What the hell is a Malabulg? Why don't they just call it a bunch of pits?
Well, they did. Malabulg is Italian for evil ditch.
This is why I stick with engineering. Everything makes more sense. Dante refuses to raise a hand to Beatrice, even when half his body is covered in blood and she's holding it with her fire hands.
But while I live, I can absolve you. Forgive me. And free yourself.
My cross.
I brought it back to you. Accept again the love of God.
God's fire purifies Beatrice, and she thanks Dante by sucking all his injuries out. Beatrice gets rescued by a two-faced angel. Virgil comes back to congratulate Dante, then says that he can't stay with him. Good work, Virgil, you've done a fat lot of good. Why did you leave in the first place, and why did you come back? Just to give Dante a pat on the back? He needs a smack in the head, more like it. Then Dante jumps into the 9th circle, cutting through some heavy chains on his way down. And let me guess, we got another change in animation. Oh look, we do! And this is the worst one of the rest. Dante's head is smaller than his shoulders. And how many belts is he wearing? Why are they so big?
Finn,
What?
you'll want to save that rant for the upcoming fight scene.
Why?
So we finally reached the 9th circle of hell, a barren cavern of ice, so cold because it's the furthest possible place from God's light and warmth. This circle is reserved for the worst that humanity has to offer: traitors, self-serving schemers, and idiots who don't push their shopping carts back. And at the very center of it all is Lucifer himself. The 9th circle was broken into 4 rings, each named for a particular traitor, and each of those traitors famous for a particular type of treachery: Cana, Antenora, Ptolomea, and finally, Giudecca. But of course, that'd be too much for the movie to focus on, so it's all one big cavern.
A cavern lined with bodies. You got people trapped in the walls and underfoot like some sort of shitty cobblestones. And then Dante comes across these big chains that he could easily walk between, but he chooses to chop through them all instead. Though I guess all that hopping around would be good for him keeping warm down there. I prefer a nice pint myself.
Okay, I gotta know, how are you doing that?
What? Drinking? Well, it helps if you open the bottle first.
No, drinking so much. How are you not even tipsy?
Oh, are you impressed, you lightweight?
There's more than a dozen bottles there!
I'm Irish! This is breakfast! Dante finishes cutting through the chains, but in a shocking twist that nobody cared about, it's revealed that they was all keeping old Lucifer pinned down.
Welcome, great Dante. Welcome to your final resting place.
Wait, are those pitiful things supposed to be the chains of Giudecca?
Those are pathetic! In the game, each link was bigger than Dante. In fact, the width of one side of a link was bigger than Dante. These chains were so massive that they could hold Kanye West's ego.
And breaking them was one of the game's better, subtler tricks.
As you descended through the Inferno, you came across these massive chains blocking your path, so you cut through them, thinking nothing more about them. But in reality, these were the very chains holding Lucifer down, and you as the player had been unwittingly helping him escape during your entire trip through the circles. But no, we can jam all of them into one hallway just for the sake of including them at the last second. That's fine. Dante and Satan square off and trade banter, and oh, ye gods, I can see what you are talking about in the animation, Crimson.
The weak and dying god. A god who is the true evil. His power wanes over the world.
Did they just forget his lips were supposed to move? Is the devil suddenly telepathic? And the voice acting isn't bad, but it really doesn't match up with what we see on screen.
Silence. Your lies have no power over me, devil.
And let's not overlook the reused footage. This is the climax of the movie! Why is this the cheapest looking part? What kind of movie is this? Did they suddenly run out of money and have to salvage the climax with their snack budget?
Finn, the movie's a cheap cash grab to leech off the success of the game. No effort was put into it. That's why they changed the animation studios so often, so they could get the movie out faster.
Oh, the Mary, Mother, and Joseph! How could you start watching these movies?
I'm dead inside. I would commend you, Crimson, if I weren't so annoyed! I will say, the movie and game at least got Lucifer's design right. He was this hulking monstrosity with 3 heads, which was a parody of the Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And each of the heads was chewing on the worst criminals of recorded history. Nick Sparks, Stephanie Meyer, and E.L. James. Okay, they were actually Brutus, Cassius, and Judas Iscariot. Judas's crime was obvious, but Alighieri included Brutus and Cassius because, as he saw it, their murder of Julius Caesar split Italy apart and ruined what was otherwise the best country in the world. And you know where I'm going with this.
Fucking Yankee jump shot!
Dante decides to fight Satan, but all it takes is climbing on him and cutting him once in the forehead.
What have you done to me?
I have slain you, great beast.
That was easy.
But Satan isn't out of the fight yet. He gets this weird sack on his forehead and craps out his second form.
New life writhes inside him. No!
So Dante fights the devil, and it's not very impressive. Most of what little budget there is probably went into this mess, but it's mostly Dante and Devil Boy shouting at each other through terrible camera angles.
You worship God, but it was he who created evil. It was he who created me.
Yeah, the Lucifer of the movie is kind of a disappointment. Not sure about the game, though. Hey, NPC, how you doing? Ah!
Come on, you stupid pointy demon freak! Just die already! Die! 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 Die!
He doesn't drink coffee, does he? Mostly Mountain Dew.
So Satan bats Dante around like a cat playing with a ball of yarn, and decides to leave the battle early because he's an idiot. Dante also decides that he can't beat Satan, so he cheats. Dante actually crosses himself and invokes the power of God.
What are you doing? A repentant soul in Jutaka? Stop! Do not utter a word! But grant me the power to keep your enemy here with me.
So Dante, and God I guess, blast this overgrown goat monster and turn him into a giant hairy popsicle.
I should be a lot angrier that they're using a very literal Deus Ex Machina to resolve this fight, but since a lot of passion plays end the same way, I'm surprisingly calm about this.
Oh, then you would hate it if you played the game. Dante didn't call on God to solve his problems for him. Dante took all of the accumulated souls from his journey, the fruits of his labors, and used them to save himself and seal Lucifer away.
I have collected many souls on this pilgrimage. Souls that I have freed from this inferno. And together, they now possess the power to free me. Father, mother, brothers, absolve me!
Why did the movie need to go this way? If it were really so easy for God to just step in and beat Lucifer, then why did Dante need to be there at all? Did God need him as a catalyst or something? The game at least made you feel like you did something. Dante redeemed himself all on his own, but the movie just handed him a victory because they didn't want to use the absolved souls plot point.
Oh, who cares? Movie's just about done.
Dante falls into purgatory and rips off his clothy cross.
Really makes you wonder why he waited until now if he didn't really want or need the cross.
Just shut up, Crimson. The movie's done and I want to get out of here. Dante walks to some big mountain where Beatrice is sporting some new forehead tattoo.
Actually, she...
Shut up! And the clothy cross turns into a snake and laughs. Because of course it does.
What do you call that, Crimson? Sequel baiting? Yep. For a sequel that will never come.
Beautiful, I'm out. Send my check in the mail.
Oh, not yet. We still need to go over the ratings.
I chose a bad time to run out of beer. Well, the movie sucked. The animation changes too much and it just gets worse and worse the longer it goes on. If they had stayed with one of the first two styles, it might have been fine. But the editing was a mess. Characters had to speak over each other, and sometimes you could barely even understand what people were saying. The voice acting was the best part. At worst, it was passable, but much of it was good. Even Graham McTavish was pretty good. But he's still a worthless Scot. Don't watch it. You have to give it a number. 12 out of 100, who cares? It has to be out of 5. Then 2 out of 5, whatever. The game was much better though. The hack and slash was a lot of fun, and you really felt accomplished nailing a combo. The platforming could get a little annoying because of the fixed camera angles though.
You'd think game companies would know about that by now. The story is pretty basic, you're just rescuing your girlfriend after all, but it works. But the action and the gameplay will keep you coming back for more as you tear your way through the underworld. I give it a 4 out of 5. The movie was a shameless cash-in and makes no effort to hide it. Something like this is just one step above those cheap franchise movies starring restaurant mascots that they used to hand out in fast food joints. The movie does little to capture the feeling of the game or book. It does toss a few names out like the various sinners and gets details like Lucifer's design correct, so it's not unsalvageable. Still, enough has been changed from the book and even the game that it can't hold a candle to either. As an adaptation, the movie gets a 2 out of 5. The game did much more to recreate the book, though it clearly took many, many liberties. Obviously, unless they were trying to make something like Myst, they wouldn't have been able to follow the poets calmly through the pit. However, between the hacking and slashing, the game was good enough to include little nuggets like the various power-ups, the sinners you could damn or absolve, and the game designers paid great attention to how they showed the sinners being punished, though they took plenty of liberties with those too. As an adaptation, the game gets a 3 out of 5. Forgive me while I go fanboy. Dante's Inferno tops the charts as far as classical literature goes. The imagery and symbolism are so deep and nuanced that they're still being debated to this day. The trilogy has cultural relevance spanning centuries. The Inferno is one of the greatest influencers of our modern idea of what hell even is. Any lover of classical literature must read this book. Even a single circle could create hours of discussion and debate. Dante Alighieri was nothing short of a genius. And you know what? I'm gonna do it. Dante's Inferno deserves nothing less than a 6 out of 5. Do yourself a favor and study the hell out of this book.
Well, that was awful. I think I'm done with movies for the rest of the decade. Well, glad to have you with us on this, Finn. It happened. Crimson, if you ever drag me into something like this ever again, robot spiders all over your house. How about you let me make it up to you? I know this great Dante's Inferno themed drinking game we could try. Oh? Drinking game, you say? Yep. And no movies. You provide whiskey and I'm in. Cool. I'll explain the rules downstairs.
Who the fuck is he? I'm gonna kill him!